morning, voters. I'm Brian McCrone with NBC10 Digital. With me is Lauren Mayk, NBC10's political reporter. We're back to check out the week's happenings in the 2022 elections in Pennsylvania, particularly the Senate and gubernatorial races. The primary is May 17th. Lauren, thanks for a few minutes again this morning. Let's jump right in. Hey, let's jump right into there's a bunch of debates this week, right? So talk to us a little bit about it. The first ones were the Senate debates earlier this week. What catch us up on what happened?
Yeah, it was Debate-a-palooza this week, especially on the one night there was a debate for the Republicans and for the Democrats for Senate. So a lot for voters to take in this week on that, which is good because there are a lot of voters who are undecided at this point. The polls that have come out have shown that a lot of people have not made up their minds. So this is an opportunity to hear directly from the candidates and to hear them side by side with their opponents, sometimes answering the same questions, sometimes answering different questions. The thing that was notable about the Republican debate for Senate was that this was the first formal debate with Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz, and Dave McCormick, and the other candidates all on stage together. There have been some other ones where Oz and McCormick did not participate and some other candidates did not participate, but this one had both them in it and also Carla Sands. There was at least one that I was at that she did not participate. But anyway, they were all on stage together for this one, and there was quite a bit of fire thrown at Oz. This was the first time that they were all together also since former President Trump endorsed Oz. So that sort of put him on a new plane. They were already attacking him, but this sort of gave them a new reason to. And the one thing that was interesting is that these other candidates are not backing down in their pursuit of Trump supporters and in their argument that, they are the best one to carry the Trump mantle and to carry on his America First policies. And they tried to make that argument in that debate. So that was one of the interesting things as we saw them.
I have an interesting clip from Kathy Barnett, one of the Republicans running. Let me try to pull that up.
A few moments ago, Mehmet said that MAGA means respect. No, MAGA means freedom. And if you're a conservative Republican, you know that. Yes, President Trump coined the word MAGA, but the word itself, Make America Great Again, belongs to the people. What does it mean? It means the freedom to live my life the way I choose to live my life, and not to have anyone's foot placed on my throat telling me what I can and cannot do, forcing me to take a jab when I may or may not want to take a jab, forcing me to do things or to teach my children certain curriculum that I don't want to do. That is what the word means. So although it was coined by President Trump, it certainly belongs to the people of this great nation, and we need to be very mindful of that. And I want the people who are watching, be very mindful and be very clear. It doesn't take much for someone to learn our talking points as conservative Republicans and then come back on stage and parrot them to us. Look at how people.
Yeah, Brian, what was interesting about that moment, particularly when she said that MAGA does not belong to President Trump, that it belongs to the people, MAGA being the acronym for Make America Great Again, which was his campaign slogan in 2016, and that has carried on. That I tweeted when that happened. I tweeted quoting her that she had said this at the debate, and that got quite a bit of reaction on social media from some people saying that they agreed with her and that this was something that had bubbled up from the people, and some people critical of that and saying no, this belongs to President Trump, and he has credit and responsibility for it. So it is an interesting debate among the Trump supporters of where that comes from. And it was an interesting moment that she chose to make that comment. You also heard at the end of that where she is talking about parroting conservative talking points. There was quite a bit of back and forth about whether Oz is conservative. He was even asked during the debate about the attacks on him and the attacks that he's a rhino or Republican in name only, and had an opportunity to respond to that. And he also used quite a bit of his time to promote his endorsement of President Trump. And that was in some ways that was part of his defense for some criticisms that, hey, President Trump endorsed me. He picked me. He looked at my record. He looked at what I've said, and he looked at what I stand for, and he endorsed me. So that is, that's something that he has to stand on that the other candidates don't.
Yeah, let's listen to an interesting, I think this was from McCormick, talking about that Trump endorsement and how it hasn't added as much fuel to the fire as some people might think it would.
And the reason Mehmet keeps talking about President Trump's endorsement is because he can't run on his own positions and his own records. And what's true is that he has flip-flopped on every major issue we're talking about in this campaign. He's never, in his entire media career, advanced a conservative agenda. They're all liberal points, liberal agenda that he put forward, and now he's flip-flopping. And the problem, Doctor, is there's no miracle cure for flip-flopping, and Pennsylvanians are seeing right through your phoniness, and that's what you're dealing with, and that's why you're not taking off in the polls.
All right.
So yeah, that's Mehmet Oz is the front runner right now, right? So he has a slim margin. Some of these polls that we've seen, right? Give or take.
It depends on what poll you're looking at, and there have been very few since the Trump endorsement. I believe that there was one after the Trump endorsement where he was in front, but I think not by much. I mean, it is a fairly it's expected to be a fairly tight race. There's a lot we don't know, Brian. I'm hesitating here because there just haven't been a lot of polls. Right. And what we had seen previously was that McCormick was out in front, and then we did have the Trump endorsement, and we did see Oz come up. We're going to talk a little bit about the Monmouth poll coming up, and they asked things a little bit differently, not who you will vote for, but who are you very likely to support. And that ended up a very, very, very tight race, not just with Oz and McCormick, but also with Barnett, who you heard from, putting the three of them really on the top there. But, you and I talked about this last week, that the Trump endorsement definitely got people to take a look at Oz who might have dismissed him. Trump supporters who might have said, who might have heard some of those ads against him and said, oh, he's Hollywood, or oh, he's not a conservative. And the Trump endorsement made them stop and say, oh, okay, I'm going to take a look at this guy. But it didn't necessarily get everyone to jump on board. They were still going to events like we talked about last week. I met some people at an Oz event, checking him out, hearing what he had to say. And they've got about 2.5 weeks left to do that. And the question is, will he have time to win over the ones who are willing to give him a look, but who aren't all the way on board?
Yeah, let's jump over to the Democrats. They also had a debate, right, on this. I think it was the same night, correct?
It was the same night, yeah. Yeah, there was like a
competing
half-hour overlap.
Yeah. Let's jump right into, there's a back and forth. The two front runners in that race, though it's also still very much up in the air ahead of the May 17th primary, is Conor Lamb, the congressman from Western Pennsylvania, and John Fetterman, the lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania. I just want to play a clip here and get your reaction to this one.
The Supreme Court is completely over their head, and I think every moment we're not talking about people and what they're going through right now is a wasted moment.
All right, I want to go back to our...
can we both think? Yeah, I have the same thing. I have to agree. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, if they start attacking what we see going on with voting rights, the environment, recently the Clean Water Act, if they start going after Medicare, if they start really going after Social Security, there's a lot of things that this Supreme Court...
Aren't you doing
no,
what
I'm not.
They're saying that there's decisions you don't like?
To my esteemed colleagues here, no one here is FDR, and he tried to do, and he wanted to do it too. And, he was a great Democrat who did great things for this country.
That's the one. Let me play one of them. That's one of the one of the four running. She wanted to just take a look at the track records of both Fetterman and Conor Lamb, who they're really speaking for. And then here's the other one, another one I want to play.
Is Conor's mentor, and he did host a fundraiser for Conor, and he just said recently that he would make a heck of a senator. So I mean, that's an endorsement, and I'm just saying, do you embrace Joe Manchin's endorsement of you in 2020? It's, you wanted a yes/no answer, and I'm asking you, yes or no, do you embrace Joe Manchin's endorsement in the 2022 election?
Well, you have as hard of a time asking questions as you have answering them. Again, when I was a member of Congress, he appeared at a fundraiser for me and expressed his support for me as a member of Congress. I accepted it then. Of course I did. My voting record is what it is. I'll work with any Democrat to get things done. I have no problem with that at all.
And if you're asking the same rules, yes or no?
The question is factually incorrect, but if you're asking me if I'll accept the support of a Democratic senator who supports my campaign, absolutely.
So you heard from Alexandria Khalil, and then now the back and forth between Fetterman and Conor. What do you make of that?
Yeah, this was, this was obviously the lieutenant governor's attempt to sort of put Conor Lamb in that bucket with Democratic Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, because Joe Manchin has sort of been the deciding factor in whether certain pieces of legislation and certain parts of Joe Biden's agenda has gotten through and has actually stopped and prevented some of these things from going forward, because the Democrats' majority in the Senate is so slim that they need every vote. And so Joe Manchin has sort of been in the driver's seat in some cases and being able to say, no, I'm not comfortable with that. This is John Fetterman's attempt to say, hey, could Conor Lamb do the same thing if he is elected? As Pennsylvania senator, and would he prevent those things? So that's sort of the argument that John Fetterman is trying to make there.
Yeah. And it leads into our second segment here about the issues that matter. Someone actually did. We have a comment on Facebook from a Sean Baldwin. Thanks, Sean. He says, "Who really gives a hoot in uncertain terms about the phrase MAGA?" Going back to what Ms. Barnett was talking about. He's like, I want to know about gas prices, inflation, foreign policy, voting rights, not just catchphrases. And so there was some in that poll that did come out this week too, that we referenced a little bit earlier. There was some talk of, about the issues. A look at the issues. Tell us about what really is important to people in this.
Yeah, this is a Monmouth University poll, and they asked lots of things. There's lots to unpack here. And as a matter of fact, I'm working on some stories that are going to be in our 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock shows later today that you can see more of this. But let's take a look at some of the issues. I don't know if you can scroll down, but to the bottom of where that is. And you really see the divide between Democrats and Republicans in terms of what issues are important to them. And you can understand why you hear Democratic candidates talking about different issues than Republican candidates. And it's in part because their voters care about different issues. And we are in primary season right now. So you're speaking largely to the voters of your own party. And if you take a look there, I know it's pretty small, but you can see, just look at how, oh, thanks, Brian. Just look at the difference in some of those in terms of the top issues. These are asking the top issues. And on the right, all the way to the right column, those are Republican voters. And then the one a little bit to the left, those are Democratic voters. And so you see inflation, 56% of Republicans said that's their top issue. And 28% of Democrats said that's their top issue. So both important to them, but Republicans more than half. And then take a look at the next one. It says illegal immigration as the top issue. 36% of Republicans, 2% of Democrats. So obviously that's an issue Republicans are talking about. It's not an issue that Democrats are talking about. And then you've got, some of them are more Ukraine, Russia, that's sort of more similar. Gas prices, Republicans say, more Republicans put that as the top issue than Democrats do. The other thing that's interesting about this poll, and I spoke with the pollster, Patrick Murray from Monmouth about this, is that if you look at this, Republicans' issues are sort of clustered together. There are sort of fewer issues, and more people care about them as their top issue. They're sort of more all on the same page about the things they care about. Democrats are more split. You have some people who are saying the environment is their top issue. You've got people who are saying that their top issue is COVID. It's a lot more split up. You don't have Democrats saying that 56% of Democrats in this particular poll, you don't have 56% of Democrats saying that anything is their top issue. It's really split up, which can make it difficult for Democratic candidates to make people happy, because a lot of people have different issues that are important to them.
What is it that what do you see about why do you think there is this Republican cohesion around a couple of them versus so spread out? What are they? How does that mean in the long term for trying to figure out who your candidate's going to be?
Well, in some ways, it's a little bit. It could be a little bit easier in choosing your candidate because they're going to, there are only a couple issues to discuss. But on the other hand, if they all agree on those things, then you have to, what are you basing your vote on? You've got to find other things. You have to ask other questions or find out what they've done in the past and see if they have something that is of interest to you. But on the Democratic side, you might be more likely to have candidates that have, kind of pick one particular issue as the flag that they're going to carry, and they sort of make that a central piece of their campaign. I remember, for example, during the presidential race, there was a candidate who made the environment. That was central to his campaign. That was his main thing, and the one thing that he really wanted to talk about and really wanted to push, and he made that very clear. And when you've got 11% of Democrats, at least this is this Pennsylvania poll, who say that's their top issue, you're going to get some attention. It's a lot easier to do that, on the Democratic side. But then again, you might only get 11%. So it's tough, Brian. It's tough. What does it all mean? It's hard to tell, but at least we're getting a sense of maybe why they're talking about certain issues. And as the voter who just chimed in, said that he wanted to hear. Did he say gas prices?
Yep. Gas prices were the first thing he said. Yep.
And voters do get frustrated when they see candidates, sniping at each other during a debate and kind of using their time for that, instead of answering questions about things and taking on issues. And sometimes the candidates who do take on some of the issues, I know that NBC had, a very small pool of people that they watched one of the debates with, and they kind of those voters gave credit to the candidate who answered the questions and stuck more to the policy instead of the attacks. Now, is that going to get you all the way to the finish line? We'll see. But at this point during the race, when voters are looking for information and trying to make their decision, like the voter who chimed in there, sometimes they want to hear you talk about gas prices.
Yeah, there was also a governor's debate on the Republican side, right? And that just happened last night. I don't have any clips for that at the moment to pull and show, but we had the Republicans battling it out. What can you give us in a brief rundown? Of course, you watched last night. What did you take away?
Those were four of it's a very big field on the Republican side. There were only 4 candidates who participated in that debate, and they were sort of the 4 leading candidates, according to the polls that we've seen. And, one thing that was clear is that there were a lot of things that they agreed on. And it was also very clear that there is still a big question in terms of former President Trump's endorsement, because he has not endorsed in that race, and we don't know if he will endorse in that race. And so that was kind of hanging out there, unlike the Senate debate where Oz had been endorsed and the other candidates were trying to say, hey, I still represent the values of President Trump's supporters. This was a case where the candidates were still kind of lobbying for that endorsement and talking about why they should get it. Bill McSwain, the former U.S. attorney from the Philadelphia area, President Trump had actually sort of anti-endorsed him and told people not to vote for him. So that was out there last night. So that was an interesting kind of overlay as everything was happening, that it is an unknown that could change at any time. Although I will say, given what we've seen in the Senate race, we don't know how much it would change things.
Yes, that's right. So the Trump endorsement still hangs out over the Republican side of the governor's race. On the Democratic side of the governor's race, there is no debates needed, right? We have Josh Shapiro, the Attorney General, the current Pennsylvania Attorney General, who is going to receive the nomination to run against whoever wins that Republican primary. And so this is all happening. We have less than 3 weeks left. That's why we're highlighting now the deadlines that are coming up, right? So tell us a little bit. We have two big deadlines, really, I think that voters should know about, right? The registration deadline and also the mail-in balloting deadline. Talk to us a little bit about how important these two are and how they're coming up pretty fast.
Well, if you want to participate, then you got to make sure you're registered. That deadline is, I believe, May 2nd, to make sure that you are registered in Pennsylvania, and not just registered, but make sure you're registered in the party that you want to, whose primary you want to be voting in. So if you maybe you're not, if when you registered you didn't put a party affiliation down, but you'd really like to, you think you're going to maybe vote Republican and you'd like to weigh in on in the Republican primary, you need to make sure that you change that in time, and make yourself a registered Republican so you can participate in that. Or if you'd like to participate in the Democratic primary for Senate, for example, or for Congress, or any other races, you need to make sure that make sure that your registration says that you are a Democrat or a Republican, so you can participate in that particular primary, because there are closed primaries in Pennsylvania, which means if you are not registered with one of those parties, you can't vote in their primary.
Yep, and then May 10th is the mail-in balloting application. So we should everyone who wants to vote by mail-in balloting has to remember May 10th is that, and that even puts you pretty close to the May 17th primary. So probably want to do that as soon as possible. So yeah, Lauren, thanks again. As always, this week was great. It was huge with all these debates.
Very busy.
We'll be back in touch with you again and talk a little bit more about this big year in elections coming up next week. Thank you, all the voters out there who tuned in, and don't forget all the deadlines, and make sure you check in at NBC10.com/decision2022 to get up all the news that you need. Thanks again, everybody. Talk to you soon.